In today's video, we're taking a look at some latest trade talk involving the Toronto Maple Leafs potential defense targets like Mark Giordano. We also have word from an article in Vancouver media that could Brock Boeser maybe be the odd man out here eventually. We're not talking about it now, but down the road, could we see Boeser be traded from the Canucks? We also have all the latest updates from the World Junior Championships, and the NHL continues to postpone more and more games. We'll discuss all this coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, we're not recording from our normal studio here today, on the road in a hotel. So bear with me here for a little bit of a different setup for this evening. Let's kick things off with the news about more games being postponed. Of course, we found out yesterday that the NHL had postponed an additional 3 games. Then we found out more today as more and more tests are coming back from NHL players. The amount of players being tested positive for the latest COVID strain is absolutely insane. I think as of yesterday, December the 26th, I believe the totals were 131 players in COVID protocol, 21 staff, including several head coaches, and about 25 to 30 additional support staff like trainers and all these other roles that are more behind the scenes type of things. So it's pretty crazy. And that's including a lot of players that were released from their COVID protocol that were in it over the holidays as well. So certainly not a good scene. More games being postponed here. Some teams hit really hard. Like the Leafs are hit hard, like Boston. There's several other teams too, like a lot of teams with a lot of positive cases. It looks as though the NHL is going to try to mitigate things by having the taxi squads, as we talked about yesterday. They are officially back. Teams have started calling players up to have them available so that they can, put a full team on the ice. But at the end of the day, we're going to see the NHL go through here with a lot of big names out of the lineup at times, and teams are going to really be shorthanded. Even though they'll have technically full lineups available, they're not going to be NHL quality at all times. So certainly another situation here, like I mentioned in the last few days, it's going to become more and more chaotic for them to get through this season unless they follow the lead of the other leagues, I think, and adjust the testing protocols. But that's not up to me. That's up to a lot of the top doctors that work for the NHL and the NHLPA, and we'll have to see where things go. I mean, they have a big window in February to make up games since they're not going to the Olympics, but is that going to be enough, or we're going to have to see more changes? It's really hard to say, and certainly a situation really worth monitoring here as we go on. Of course, as you know, the World Junior Championships got underway yesterday on Boxing Day, December 26th. As usual, we do have a World Junior preview video here on the channel. In case you didn't get a chance to watch it already, it gives you basically what to look out for in the entire time, explains how the tournament is set up, all the top players to look out for. We saw the first day of action provide a lot of entertainment. In the first game of the day, we saw the Finns beat the Germans by a 3-1 score. Helenius scored 2 goals for the Finns. Merilainen was solid in goal. And Brad Lambert, one of the top prospects from the 2022 NHL draft, who was, I guess, a bit of a fallen commodity, you could say. At one point, he was in the conversation for the top couple spots of the draft, and now he's fallen down in most draft ranking lists, and the services have him anywhere from like 8 to 15. I've even seen the odd one around the 20 mark, and he had some real solid plays so far. Of course, some early games have already taken place today as well as I record this video, and Lambert to me has had a real solid couple of games, been very impressive. Certainly a guy who can drive a lot of play, and I think we're going to see his stock continue to start to go back the other way and rise more if he continues this throughout this tournament. We saw the Swedes beat the Russians by a 63 score. For the Russians, I mean, we didn't get a great game from Askarov in between the pipes. Yaroslav Askarov, the Predators prospect, who was one of the top goalie prospects, really in the entire NHL for goaltenders, not having a good showing. Now, Matvei Michkov, who is an underager, not scheduled to be drafted until 2023. At the same time that you'll see Connor Bedard go for Canada, they are going to be the top couple of players. Right now, Bedard's been the consensus number 1 for a while, but Michkov had a terrific game, scored 2 goals, about 41 or 42 seconds apart. Tremendous player, certainly going to give Bedard a run for his money for that top spot. I know the Russian contract he has to play over there might scare off some teams, though. We'll see if that has much of an impact. Some of the Swedish prospects looking real solid, like Red Wings prospect defenseman Simon Edvinsson. Edvinsson, I thought, had a real solid game, including a shorthanded goal. Alexander Holtz for the Devils, and a real solid game for Sweden, too. So overall, a real solid game for the Swedes. Not a great start for the Russians. The U.S. survived the Slovakian team 3-2. They had a real solid first couple of periods, but the Slovaks gave them a bit of a scare in the third. The U.S. was up 3-0 after 2, but the Slovaks scored 2 goals early in the third to make it interesting and have a bit more, closer game here in the end. But overall, the U.S. holds on for a 3-2 victory. Certainly a few players sticking out there for the Americans. I thought, Jake Sanderson had a pretty solid game overall. Didn't get on the score sheet, but the captain certainly had a good game. Their blue line was pretty solid. Overall, though, I think their forwards are going to have to do even more to kind of make sure that they score enough goals here to continue winning. Of course, the Canadians had a little bit of an early scare from the Czechs. Of course, Czech Republic now wants to be referred to as Czechia. So the Canadians beat them 6-3, powered by an Owen Power hat trick. The first overall draft pick from last year to the Buffalo Sabres was the first ever defenseman in Canadian history to score a hat trick at this World Junior Championship tournament. So certainly had a terrific performance from him. A lot of the goals came from the blue line. Mason McTavish was an absolute beast for the Canadians as well. Scored the first goal for Team Canada. Then the Czechs scored 3 consecutive goals in basically about a 5-6 minute stretch where Canada just did not look good. They were out of sync. The Canadian defense were kind of, making bad decisions, pinching, and then getting caught. And the Czechs made them pay between a couple of odd man breaks and a power play. But after that, Dave Cameron called timeout for Canada, got them situated, and they kind of settled down and took over from there. But we saw some other blue liners get in on the scoring action here as well, and Canada looked pretty solid once they got going here. In this game, we also saw a pretty serious injury to Jirčák of the Czech Republic, one of the top prospects here in the 2022 NHL draft. The defenseman was having a pretty solid game when he ended up tried to make a hit, ended up with a knee-on-knee collision. It wasn't anything dirty on either side, but just an unfortunate outcome by a clean attempt at a hit. And it looks like his tournament is going to be done. But the good news is there was concern early on that it could be several months recovery. He may not get a chance to play a lot of hockey now between now and the draft, but it looks as though the prognosis is not as bad as they had feared, and we're talking weeks now, not months, before he makes the comeback. So that's certainly promising news considering where things were looking like there when the injury first took place. Now back to the NHL, a few quick updates here. One serious injury that's going to keep one player out for the year is Brandon Tanev of the Seattle Kraken. He's been injured since December the 18th when the Kraken played the Edmonton Oilers. Tanev had a situation there where they've been kind of monitoring him, trying to figure out exactly what is going to be with his injury, and now they've announced he is done for the year due to an ACL injury. Is going to keep him out the rest of the season. So Tanev was having a real solid year for the Kraken. Certainly had a bit of a breakout season production-wise, with the offense getting a chance to play a bigger role. But it was also a fan favorite there at Seattle too. He's had a real good impact on that city and the franchise in their first season. Unfortunate news for him that his season is now officially over. Now we want to focus on a couple of trade rumors here. One would be for the Maple Leafs. Now we know that right now this is not something I expect to happen anytime soon. This will be closer to the deadline. But the Leafs are certainly in a situation, which has been rumored for a while, that they would probably want to upgrade the blue line if they can. And Travis Dermott or Justin Hall would be the most likely trade piece, and bringing in another veteran guy, similar to what they did when they brought in Jake Muzzin a couple of years ago. Obviously, this is probably going to have to be a rental situation, though, because of their cap situation, and many feel that Mark Giordano would be an excellent fit. There's a lot of talk that the Seattle captain is likely going to be moved. Seattle, of course, is not trending towards being a playoff team, and it makes sense that even though they named him captain, he's a pending unrestricted free agent, final year of his deal, he's getting older. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me that they offer a big extension. They might go ahead and try to sign him, but I personally would not be surprised to see him want to explore UFA status. It's something he hasn't really done. Of course, he was a Calgary Flame for so long, then ends up going to Seattle in the expansion draft, and we'll see. I mean, you just never know where he might end up, but he's made it perfectly clear he has no intentions of retiring, and he's still playing relatively well. Now, for a Seattle standpoint, to pick up a guy like Dermott or Hall would make a lot of sense, given the fact that, especially Dermott, more so than Hall because of the age difference. I mean, Hall's not old, but at least he's in his late 20s, where Dermott's still on the earlier side of his 20s here, so it would make more sense to go for a guy like Dermott for Giordano. It gives him a lot more experience back there. Giordano's had a lot of playoff games under his belt. Of course, like I said, I've been in the NHL a long time, would be a terrific fit. The Leafs are not the only team that's been linked here. We've heard even the Rangers being linked to Giordano, and that dates back to the expansion draft. There was a lot of talk that the Rangers were interested in doing a swap with Seattle, making like a side deal to have him flipped to the Rangers after they selected him from the Calgary Flames. And we know that the Rangers have been in the rumor mill wanting to add a third pair defenseman as well to take the pressure off some of their younger defensemen that are playing in that kind of role right now. And that could also be a situation that they may look to do that too. I mean, that also would make a lot of sense. The Rangers have had a terrific start to the season, and added a veteran guy like him would be a huge boost. So whether or not it's them or even a team like the Avalanche, another team looking to add on the blue line before the deadline. I don't think there's going to be a ton of real solid UFA rental defensemen on the market. So the ones that are like Giordano and Sherrod, etc., will certainly get a pretty good price for the teams that have those assets to move. So we'll see where that goes, but certainly keep an eye on Giordano to the Leafs as a potential target for them later into the season. And as well, I want to look at the Canucks. Now, we had come across an article here from Sportsnet and Ian McIntyre talking about some predictions that he's making for the rest of the year for the Canucks that he covers. Now, of course, one of them was the fact that Quinn Hughes gets into the Norris Trophy conversation. The other prediction that we're not going to really focus on too much here today is that newly appointed head coach Bruce Boudreau gets another contract and gets extended to remain with the team longer term after a perfect start so far, 6-0. We'll see how they continue to play once they get back on the ice and get into game action here. But certainly, both of those predictions to me, pretty likely to take place. This next one is certainly a little bit more of a bolder prediction, but I want to get everybody's thoughts on it because it's going to be a situation where the Canucks are likely going to have to trade somebody. Just doing the math here, we're talking about just strictly economics and mathematics. It tells us that that's likely going to have to be the case. And his prediction here is that Brock Boeser could end up being the odd man out. Now, Boeser's a pending RFA this year. He needs a new contract this offseason. He's going to be owed a qualifying offer at $7.5 million. So that's going to be a lot of money for them to choke down. Of course, he wasn't really having a good season before, but since Boudreau's come along, Boeser's been on fire. So clearly, to trade Brock Boeser based on how he's played recently would really make no sense at all. Now, so you have to wonder, would that even make sense? The answer is no, not right now. But here's the other problem and conundrum that they're going to be facing is that we're not really going to get much of a cap increase for the next few years. And then, of course, you get Boeser this year, but then also this offseason, JT Miller and Bo Horvat are both eligible for contract extensions as they enter the last year of their deal. So, of course, the issue there is if you don't extend them, you're going into the final year of the deal, you could be at risk to lose them for, as a free agent. So do you extend Miller and Horvat? Because if you do, you're not really going to leave yourself enough money for Boeser, because after that, you get Pettersson contract, because he only did a 3-year deal. So you get Boeser this year, Miller and Horvat eligible for extensions entering the final year of their deals, and Pettersson after that. So it's all going to come pretty quick. And to keep all four of those guys while working on the rest of their team and rounding out their roster here is going to be pretty much impossible to do. Like the odds of one of those four players going is pretty extremely likely, and it's not going to be Pettersson unless he really doesn't get things turned around. But clearly, with the talent and everything that he has, you wouldn't think it would be him. So, I mean, Boeser being traded ahead of Miller or Horvat, I'm not sure completely makes sense either. If you look at it based on age, Boeser's the youngest, Miller's the oldest, Horvat's in between, Horvat's their captain, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't work out that way. And the article basically says that at $7.5 million, it might be a little bit too much money for the Canucks, and that Boeser might end up getting moved as well. Now, they're not going to do any of these trades. To me, this season, before the deadline, the way they've been playing, they're going to be pushing to try to get into the playoffs. And if they keep playing the way they did when before this little pause here, then that's a real possibility they might be able to do it. So that's not going to happen. But in the offseason, that's going to be some real tough decisions. And I would say between the NHL draft and the first part of free agency, to see between Boeser, Miller, and Horvat, one of them being moved is extremely, extremely likely. And if Boeser keeps playing the way he has under Boudreau, they're not going to want to move him. It's just that simple. So you're going to end up with another victim here, likely being Miller or Horvat, unless they find a way to move like a Tyler Myers or another bigger contract, which is, going to create a hole in the blue line anyway. It's really going to have some extremely tough decisions here. Thankfully for Vancouver, they have some new people in charge. Jim Rutherford, we know, is not afraid to make bold moves, but Ian McIntyre's prediction here is that Boeser's the odd man out. He gets traded this offseason and they re-sign Miller and Horvat. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you think that's realistic, or is it more likely that Boeser does get signed and one of the other two get moved instead, or do they magically find a way to make it all happen? Because it's not going to be easy. They'd have to shed a lot of other money elsewhere to have a real good shot at making that happen. So let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.